508, how are you? Very cool. So, what is today? Today is Sunday, July 17th. And congratulations, you are now in the back half of the course. So, it's all downhill from here. And you guys are now experts in terms of stress management and how the brain works. It interacts with your peripheral nervous system. So, you learned all about that. Okay, the automatic nervous system, really the autonomic nervous system, and and then how that taps into how we handle our blood glucose and diabetes and risk and inflammation and on and on and on. All right, very cool. In fact, you're so good at this. Julia sent out a study guide right here. Okay, and you see right here, it's a review. Okay, so that you can breeze through the exam. Right, so it goes through lecture 1, as you see right here, where it goes over that autonomic nervous system, the rest and digest, and the fight or flight system. The sympathetic is fight or flight, and you can see all the fight or flight aspects of this. Okay. We then have this really great kind of diagrammatic representation of the stress system. Okay, remember anger, fear, okay, anxiety. That is representative, that A, for the amygdala, which turns everything on. So in comes the barrage of sensory input, the amygdala turns on, and then it recruits, okay, from the neck down, as well as things going on in your brain. And then we have these two regulatory pathways, okay? These are the little like feedback, okay? Wait a minute. This is our little stop and check system, all right? It's the emotional memory of the hippocampus, and this is right here, your decision maker, our logical thinking area, okay? Everything's okay. We can shut off the amygdala, or the amygdala gets too big, and remember the interplay of those three, all right? And this talks about the hijack right here. All right, very cool. We saw the inverted U. You know what I did today? I did a little kind of controlled stress, all right? I went surfing. All right, that's what I did in the afternoon. What an awesome thing to do. By the way, if you're looking to get into a Zen moment, okay, and really experience nature, okay, because that's a really good way to reduce your stress. If you live in the Southern California area, during this week, I would say probably Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, some of the largest waves, ocean waves we have seen in the last 10 years are going to be arriving. It's going to be a spectacle, so you should go check it out. Just, go to the pier or go, and it's always the south-facing beaches like Huntington Beach or San Clemente, okay? Malibu will have some big ones. Alrighty, so the inverted U, a little bit of controlled stress, that's good, okay? That way I can deal with bigger stresses later on, all right? It's kind of a learned system, all right? Okay, and then we heard about epigenetics, all right? So very cool, and a lot of you guys love this pup exercise and how we have different tools, okay, of turning on and off gene sets, okay? We have methylation, we have acetylation, all right? And so that's what that's all about right here. And then we go through other key points right here. I'm not going to go through this. Oh my God, look, that's how we control our glucose. Look at that. That's the sensitivity of the insulin receptor that will then open the channel so you can flood the cell with glucose, which is a hexagon right here, right? In it comes, okay? If there is insensitivity, you see this guy right here, cortisol, it blocks this from happening. Yikes, the blood glucose stays high, okay? Not a good thing, okay? And what happens is then that becomes reminiscent of what bacteria look like when the blood glucose stays high, and it triggers the inflammatory response, all right? Okay, so that's my quick review right here. Don't forget, okay, we're gonna look right over here. Tomorrow, okay, right there is the exam, okay? So this explains everything to you, okay? So it's open all day long, okay? Once you enter the test, you have 3 hours to complete it. Obviously, it's open book, open world, open cognitive superior function, right? And that's what you guys are gonna have. You can call us if you have any problems at 949-292-5198. That's my number, 949-292-5199. That's Julia's number. Or you can text us. You can email us. We'll be monitoring that, okay? All righty. And then here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit my preview, all right? Just real quickly. So this is what it's going to look like on my side, okay? And this is what it will look like on your side when I click on the exam. All right, so this is our little descriptive preamble about the exam, and then what you will do is you'll click right onto the midterm like so, and this is what is going to be popped up, and it tells you the different modules that are happening. You hit begin and you start your multiple choice exam. All right, pretty straightforward stuff, guys. Very cool. Awesome. All right, where are we? Let's go back to a student view here, because what I want to do now is I want to start the second half of the course. And, you know, as is the case, we're going to go right in here with every week, okay? When we start talking about a course like this, the mind-body connection, every single week, I'm wearing my Neuroendocrine shirt because that's in honor of my wife, my beautiful wife, Julia, who's going to be giving the next lecture about interventions, serious interventions, okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit about intervention as well as when we look at this, again, this first lecture and the second half of the course. There are entire nutrition programs devoted to this gut-brain interaction, okay? Brain-gut interaction. So it goes both ways, all right? We're going to give you a little bit of a flavor of this. It's something that we should all be aware of because it is, you know, basically one of the newest areas of research in terms of mind-body connection, okay, in terms of how we can take on different types of approaches, how we can control our stress levels and also control our body's inflammation by what we put inside our stomachs, okay? All righty, so that's what this is all about. This video is going to go right here. And thank you, Sean. Sean had told me last week, even though I sent it out as an email, I forgot to stick one into the official lecture site. So I did it kind of after the fact. And I believe that was potentially lecture 5. And I apologize for that. Okay, so again, quiz and discussion prompt. Okay, think about that. You can always open your quiz, which is right down here. Okay, into a separate window, okay, separate browser, and then just go back and forth. Every time you open the quiz, of course, if you don't do anything, then you're not going to get the same questions. Okay, so what do we have going on here? I put this little thing, I put this at the very end here, all right? And it's not something that you're held responsible for in this course, but it's something that I wanted you to kind of be aware of. Like I said, there's all new fields of science, and in terms of health and nutrition, and using nutrition as medicine, as an interventional tool, it is really, really exploding right now. And so I have a couple of friends that are nutritionists. I have some friends that have graduated from our gerontology, masters in nutrition, and what's happening now is people are beginning to, experts are studying the different foods and how they complement each other, and what we put into our stomach. And you're going to get what's called an inflammatory index. And it gives you kind of a readout, okay? A little gauge. It's like having the little gas gauge that we have or a speedometer that we have in a car. This is a little gauge about what you're putting into your stomach and what is the risk or reduction of creating inflammation from the food you eat, okay? If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, okay, this is what I was talking about right here, all right? So there's a couple papers that talk about the dietary inflation index, okay, and how this is a new tool, okay, for assessing what we're putting into our mouths, ultimately into our stomach and our intestines, and that is the business end, it's our intestines, that creates an inflammatory potential, okay? And then if we go from that, okay, we're gonna learn from my lecture today that a big problem that can exist based on how often we eat and what we put into our intestines, and ultimately goes from mouth to stomach to intestines, it can affect our mental health, okay? And there's tons of new research illustrating this, that gut inflammation is a risk for clinical depression, it's a risk for autism, it's a risk for schizophrenia, on and on and on. It's a risk for Alzheimer's disease, okay? And so I think you really need to keep your eyes on this, okay? And it really validates, when you're doing health promotion in whatever facility you're working at about the value and the quantity of the food. All right, so that's what that's all about. All right, let's go back up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over this. This is a beautiful paper. Okay, it is complicated. Right, this is an overview of the field. Really neat. Right, Psych Scene Hub is the journal. Okay, here's a PDF file that we've made in case you have an issue with the link. This is a really cool GIF that it illustrates the whole concept that is going on in this paper about the interaction. You see here, scroll down here at the very bottom, we have all the bacteria that emerge from the different types of food, okay? The different types of factors that are released by cells that line your intestines that affect the brain, okay? The activation of the immune system, the change in the permeability that causes hyperactivation of the immune system. And then at the very end of this GIF, you'll see we have this communication between our gut and our brains via the vagus nerve. And it illustrates how all these factors that we see right here can then come and influence directly the message that happens via the vagus nerve right here, and also the descending output. So this, you'll see, you hear afferent, that means going up to the brain, and efferent, okay, or descending is what exits the brain and influences the gut, okay? So there's this really, really neat, complicated interaction, okay? Awesome, all right. It shows you at the very end, releasing adrenaline. When do we release adrenaline? During chronic stress, okay? And you can see, okay, at the very end, it's like a little movie here, when the adrenaline gets released, it goes out into the gut right here, boom, okay? And then that influences the microbiome itself as well, right? Okay, following up on that article, here's the review that I've done of that article. It talks about, again, this vagus nerve. One of the really neat ways that has emerged for treating Parkinson's disease, for treating clinical depression, is what's called vagus nerve stimulation, where you're stimulating the input that is coming up into the brain, okay? It has access to the brain. This is called the afferent, okay? And by stimulating it in just the right way, it causes activation of your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex grows, and it seems to be alleviating clinical depression, all right? Again, our goal in terms of treatments of clinical depression, the problem is you have atrophy of your prefrontal cortex, okay? Remember, the prefrontal cortex controls our stress response. If it shrinks or atrophies, then it's really poor at controlling how we respond to stress, and this becomes a kind of a snowballing effect, okay? Stress gets higher, the prefrontal cortex shrinks even more. It affects your cognitive abilities. It affects your decision making, okay? And it causes deep rumination in terms of your problems, okay? So we can give you drugs like selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, all right, something like Prozac, something like Zoloft, okay? Trintellix, and what these drugs do is they kind of elevate serotonin, and there's a multiple pathway effect. The bottom line goal is you want the prefrontal cortex to grow. As it grows, then it controls the stress response. It has better control over our behavior and how we think, all right? All right, we can also do, remember I talked about transcranial magnetic stimulation. These were these magnets, okay? You go in for treatment for about a month, it's a physics principle, but when you put a magnet on wires, the wires being all the axons in the brain, it causes them to fire. And when neurons fire, use it or lose it, they grow in terms of their processes, okay? And again, you come out of it with better control over your behavior. And that's what the vagus nerve stimulation does as well, all right? Now, we're gonna be talking about food as even better treatment. How's that? How is that? Because you know what's lagged behind in treating mental health? Sadly, we still use the same types of drugs for treating schizophrenia, bipolar disease, clinical depression that we've used for the last 50 years, all right? There are different tweaks on these drugs, but it's basically the same approach, all right? So this is kind of, if you could do this by doing cognitive behavioral therapy, again, when you think in a way, it causes the brain to grow. With diet, reduce inflammation, okay? Improve the activity of the prefrontal cortex. What a great way to go, all right? So the vagus nerve, and discussion is about this is not how it has inputs coming up, all right, to the brain. So there's this feedback right here, but it sends output to the gut, and this is talked about right here. Okay, so the influences the autonomic activity of the gut. Okay, and so remember, rest and digest. Okay, fight or flight. Okay, so you would have less fight or flight and more rest and digest. Okay, and the vagus nerve controls that. All right, we have a neuroendocrine. Okay, we have hormones released from the gut cells. So your intestines are sitting like, here's the tube, food's coming in, and we have the very outskirts of the intestines called the epithelial cells. All right, and based on the type of food that's coming in and how much, then they release hormones to get into the bloodstream. Okay, and these hormones then can affect the brain directly, okay? Or they can affect the neighboring vagus nerve that then affects the brain, all right? We see here we have more serotonin in our gut, okay, than we do anywhere else, okay? Now, if you have a problem in terms of too much use of tryptophan by the gut, then not enough tryptophan goes up into the brain to make brain serotonin, all right? If you have compromise in the gut, the immune system gets overactivated, you release tons of cytokines, and then that changes the permeability, okay? And this is enhanced during stress, all right? We see that microbes release metabolites, okay? That will be transported back up into the brain via the vagus nerve, and that creates problems, okay? It can be toxic and cause nerve cell death. And so Parkinson's disease, for example, is thought to be linked to some of the toxins that are in the gut from a poor diet that go back up into the brain. So there's all kinds of really new stuff about this. All right, these videos will reinforce this article, okay? First, just about food, okay? And what we put into our stomach, how the different bacteria compete. Crazy, mind-blowing. Trillions of bacteria exist in our intestinal system, okay? And you know, which army of bacteria dominates depends on whether or not you're eating food of a certain type, okay? If you use a little bit of diet, you reduce the amount of intake, then that's going to reduce certain bacteria and improve the population of good bacteria, all right? So dietary restriction, okay? Different forms of dieting that are now, you know, fad-like, they can improve the bacterial content. More plant-based foods, certain bacteria are gonna grow, okay, because they feed off the plants. More sugar foods, those plant-based bacteria, they don't do so well, but the sugary eating bacteria populate. They're toxic and they cause problems. And then you can have the fatty types of bacteria where they love fat, okay? So again, intermittent fasting is a way to control things as well. All right, so this kind of discusses this, all right? At the very end, it's really cool. They talk about, believe it or not, when people have C. difficile, okay, where usually that happens after an antibiotic treatment, okay, where you sadly kill off all the good bacteria, and this really nasty bad bacteria, C. difficile, overpopulates your gut. And so one of the treatments for that is to clean out your gut and then do a fecal transplant. All right, that's, swear to God, it does work. Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit later about the new companies that have emerged where they have figured out which bacteria are good and when and how much. And again, remember, there's thousands of different species. They grow them in large facilities, and the idea is we're going to give bacteria to people as medicine. How cool is that? So there's a bunch of trials for that, especially for irritable bowel syndrome, and there are trials for clinical depression as well. All right, from there, this talks about, again, this video about this vagus nerve and how it works and how it's influenced by what we learned about in this video, okay? And then this last video, it's so well done. It's a little complicated, so well done. And it's about activation of your immune system. And for those of you that have autoimmune disease, you look at this and you kind of go, oh yeah, now I get it. This all makes sense, okay? That's what that's all about right there. So please watch this video in the series of 1, 2, and 3, and it'll all make sense. They make hint in this video about how the nervous system is influenced, how the immune system is influenced, and then this one is a minute long, almost 2 minute long video that really hones in on the nervous system, and this is the same deal, a very short video that then hones in on the immune system. Okay, all right, so this is an overview of this article. I'm very visual, so what I like about this article, if we get into it right here, all right, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. There we go, you just click right here. Okay, they have a lot of figures, lots and lots of figures, okay? So, like I said, the gut-brain axis, it is bidirectional, all right? So when we have overactivation of, say, stress pathways, the fight or flight response versus the rest and digest response, that's gonna influence how your gut works. And we heard that in the very, very beginning, the first class, we watched the stress, the portrait of a killer. This is that highlighted Robert Sapolsky, okay? Remember the first discovery of ulcers, okay? And it was found to be, we thought it was stress from the nervous system, then it was found to be bacterial, and then it went back and there was an interaction in the nervous system that influenced the bacteria, okay? You change the acidity, the pH. It's a very complicated thing, but your brain does influence the well-being of your gut. And then the well-being of your gut goes back and influences the brain, all right? So this is the gut-brain axis, all right? So they talk about something we've talked about here, sympathetic, fight or flight, parasympathetic, rest and digest. This is the autonomic nervous system, okay? And then remember the sympathetic versus parasympathetic is going to influence the HPA, okay? Where is that? That is the hypothalamic pituitary axis, okay? And that was the one that influences cortisol, all right? Okay, they talk about neuroimmune endocrine, all right, aspects. What is the GBA? The gut-brain axis, okay? And again, so we've talked about psychoneuroimmunology, okay? So this is a big part of this as well, okay? And evidence suggests that the microbiome, the bacteria that populate your gut from the food that you eat, plays a really important role in all this, okay? Alrighty, so then they get in here, okay? And they talk, these are advertisements, my friends, okay? You can check them out if you want, all right? But they talk about the microbiome. Trillions, okay? This is 100 trillion different types of microorganisms, more cells in your gut that are bacteria than we have in our entire body, all right? Crazy to think about, okay? And they're very dynamic, and there's lots and lots of different species of bacteria, all right? Okay. So, and this is a huge, huge project worldwide of understanding this microbiome and which ones are healthy and which ones are not, okay? So they talk about, the predominant ones right here, okay? Then they get into this gut to brain link, okay? And how it influences the brain. So what's going on in the gut? First of all, like I said, the vagus nerve, right? So here's diagrammatically, they show everything we see right here, okay? Afferent means access to the brain, all right? So we're looking down here, okay, and they're talking about how neurons, okay, will, based on, these are different types of neurons that exist in your gut, will influence the brain through the vagus nerve, okay? Step by step, okay, they talk about, these are the cells that line, this is the outside world, line your intestines. This will be food in here and bacteria, okay? So they're just kind of setting the table right here. We see all these lymphoid tissue, all right? So you're gonna have these huge sentries, and you can learn about that in the last video. Huge sentries because anywhere where there's the outside world, like in our sinuses, in our skin, okay? In our mouth, okay? In our gastrointestinal system, you have to have just trillions of sentries of immune system cells, okay, that are sitting there ready to kill off anything that gets into your body that could be harmful to you. So we have a lot of immune system cells, and that's shown right here. These are specific immune cells. These are your B cells and T cells. These are the ones that B cells large B for B cell, the ones that make the antibodies, they are specific to infections. These guys are not specific. They're just general sentries. These ones undergo massive cell division, okay? They release immune system hormones called cytokines, okay? And so we look at here, they can influence our spinal cord nerves. They can influence the vagus nerve, okay, right here. That's going to determine how these guys activate this way and also the return access to the brain, okay? All right, so again, these figures are, you know, they're nicely done. And then if you look back at each signal, they talk about it. So the neuroendocrine signal. So these are these specialized cells that are releasing these contents that we see right here that are going to affect how our nervous system works, okay? We have millions of neurons in our gut, okay? And so they not only control the way the gut moves, so during digestion you're having this contraction, etc., but they're also influencing the brain. And then like I talked about, tryptophan metabolism. So serotonin, okay, that gets produced in the gut, if it gets into the bloodstream, it cannot get into the brain, right? There's a barrier in the bloodstream up in the brain. It's called the blood-brain barrier. However, tryptophan is the amino acid that does, okay? So we see that a lot of the tryptophan gets used up here, okay? And we see that the gut microbiome play an important role in terms of tryptophan metabolism, okay? So if you don't have enough tryptophan, okay, then that's going to influence your well-being, okay? You're not going to have as much serotonin. It's going to lead to clinical depression. We have the immune system, all right, that gets activated, okay, when critters that are not beneficial to us get in there. And then that also increases the permeability for more bacteria to go across the gut and get into your tissue and get into your blood, okay? All right. So that's what is illustrated right here, all right? So here is our bacteria, okay? And on the surface of the bacteria right here, there are these molecules, okay? That's what they're calling this right here. This molecule is called Lipo Polysaccharide. It is just the surface protein of the bacteria, okay? Certain bacteria that are bad for us, okay, that are produced when we eat lots of sugary food, okay? When we eat too much fatty food, can change the permeability. It makes it leaky, okay? The bacterial constants get into our bodies. The immune system begins this full-on assault, okay? And what that does then, it creates this inflammatory cascade that we see right here that's going to go up into the brain, okay? And in addition, it's going to change our availability of tryptophan, like I was talking about, all right? So we see all these different changes right here. All right, very cool. So there are, you know, we don't just have bacteria, but the bacteria have these kind of bits and pieces. They're called metabolites that come off the bacteria that can create problems, okay? And this is what they're talking about right here, okay? And then it influences, again, the different types of transmitters, all right? So we have dopamine and serotonin, okay, that are really, really high in our gut or intestinal and stomach nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system, all right? And they can also influence the activity of spinal cord neurons, okay? And then this is the bacteria getting in and influencing stuff right there, okay? All righty, so this then looks at involvement. So we overactivate the brain, it can change the hypothalamic pituitary axis, okay? And it's been shown that stress is a descending pathway, all right? So stress, remember, the amygdala, hypothalamus to the pituitary, to the adrenals, we start releasing too much cortisol, okay? And then cortisol augments bad bacteria, increases inflammation, and we have all these problems right here. These are all these cytokines that get elevated in your gut, okay? All right, so this is from the first Sapolsky video, okay? Stress and bacteria, okay? And how then it influences your overall health all throughout your body. You don't want to be inflammatory because it can cause heart disease, it can cause kidney disease, it can cause eye disease, on and on and on, okay? All right, so this is the really beautiful GIF that I was talking about, and then they go through the studies that have shown involvement of gastrointestinal disorders, okay? Stuff, gastrointestinal disorders like inflammatory bowel disease, okay? Sadly, if it's not controlled, it puts you at risk for a number of mental health issues, okay? And it's not because you're ruminating about your mental health, it's because of all the contents that change in terms of the physiology of your gut, okay? Alrighty, so these are all the different types of disorders that have been looked at, the mental health disorders, okay? And we see that the microbial composition is a risk factor for inducing depressive-like symptoms, okay? And they mentioned chronic low-level inflammatory conditions, okay, are associated with clinical depression. So here are some of your inflammatory cytokines. TNF-alpha, this is the one that is targeted when you take Humira to reduce it. IL-6, this is the one that's targeted if you take the drug Actemra to reduce it. Okay, those are both antibodies, so they have to be injected. And then this is the one that doctors use to look at your overall inflammation, called the C-reactive protein. You shouldn't be higher than 3 milligrams per liter. Okay, alrighty. So we go down here, and then they document the different diseases again. Schizophrenia, okay, irritable bowel syndrome. They talk about what steps we can take, probiotics, and what antibiotics have been shown to do that cause problems, okay, diet and lifestyle, and that's the concluding statement, which is awesome. All right, so that's my overview. Go ahead and do, read that. Again, these are science articles. Read it for pleasure. Don't get caught up in details. And then once you read it, you'll look at this and it'll make sense. You'll look at the overview, it'll make sense. And then these videos, 1, 2, and 3 will totally make sense, okay? This is the future, okay, for a lot of dietitians, something to think about. And it's also future just programmatically. If you guys run programs, you're a big part of your stress reduction concepts, that you're going to be trying to get across to your clients. Also, is we're going to talk about diet. So all these different types of environmental influences, things we have under our control: exercise, diet, stress, and how they really do affect disease processes. Okay, awesome. There you go. So these are the different types of prompts that we have relevant to this lecture. I want you guys to have fun with it. You're going to do well in the exam. Do not hesitate to contact me, and I'm going to get out of your hair right now, and Julia's going to provide you another lecture soon.